uh, Virginia Gas and Oil Board to order. This is March the 21st. We're in Big Stone Gap in their offices, and we would like for everyone to please mute or turn off your cell phones as these proceedings are being recorded. The first item on the docket is we'll review and approve the remote attendance resolution for any board members that was not attending the meeting remotely. Do we have any questions, or we have a motion?
Did we receive those from folks?
We received one from Mr. Prather and I signed it.
Okay. After we went through that,
Yes. So we have a motion to approve
motion to approve.
and a second.
Second.
Any discussion? The board acts, Ms. Gilmer, you want to call the roll?
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Ratliff,
Yes.
Mr. Jansen,
Yes.
Ms. Surratt,
yes,
Mr. Prather,
Can we do that? Okay, thank you. Now I would ask the board to introduce themselves, starting with Ms. Surratt, please.
I'm Rita Surratt, public member.
I'm Gus Jansen, a public member.
I'm Donnie Ratliff. I'm represent Cole and serve as your chairman.
I'm Bill Harris, public member.
We have a quorum. Next, the board will receive public comments. If there's anyone that wants to address the board. No one signed up. I don't see anyone, so we'll go on. Mr. Schwartz, if you don't mind, Mr. Mullins has an early court date, and we'd like to skip down and pick up T-Rock's petition number 9 first, please.
That would be fine with me.
Okay, gentlemen, if you want to come forward. Want to swear,
this first or
we're doing 9 first, T-Rock. Would you introduce yourself first, please?
Brady Mullins, representing Key Rock Energy.
Okay,
Morgan Pate, Key Rock Energy.
okay,
Mark Alleman, Key Rock Energy.
thank you.
Mr. Alleman and Mr. Pate, do you swear and affirm your testimony is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
I do.
You may proceed, Mr. Mullins.
Thank you. Mr. Pate, could you please state your name, by whom you're employed, and your job description, please?
Morgan Pate, I'm employed by Key Rock Energy and I'm a geologist.
And is Key Rock Energy authorized to conduct business in the Commonwealth of Virginia?
Yes,
And they have filed a bond with this department, is that correct?
yes,
And you're familiar with the application that we're talking about today? This would be VGOB 22-1220-4254.
yes,
And this is for a coal bed methane well, is that correct?
yes,
And this is located in the Nora gas field.
yes.
And how many acres does this proposed unit contain?
482.
And can you explain to the board what Key Rock plans to do if this application is granted?
We will drill into the mine works for the purpose of producing gob gas and generating carbon credits.
And after these carbon credits are generated, what do you do with them?
Sell them on the open market.
And what entity oversees those sales?
California Air Resource Board.
All right. And what seam of coal is the coal bed methane produced from?
Jawbone.
And have you obtained leases for a portion of this unit?
Yes.
And is that with Intervest?
Yes, sir.
And just so that the board recalls, this is a situation where Intervest has the entire proposed unit leased, but they have only leased to Key Rock the portion that they own. There was some discussion of that last month.
Thanks.
And how was the Intervest informed of this proceeding?
Certified mail return receipt requested.
And has the notice with the associated documentation been filed with this board?
Yes,
And what percentage of the unit does Key Rock have under lease from Intervest?
88.8%.
And so the percentage that Key Rock does not have, is that 11.2%?
Yes,
And are all those owners listed on Exhibit B3 of the application?
yes,
And as we stated, all the owners on B3 are already under lease with Intervest. Is that correct?
Yes,
And were there discussions with Intervest and their counsel, Mr. Scott, as to how to handle these owners?
there was.
And after those discussions, it was decided to apply for pooling of their interests.
Yes,
And Intervest was not interested in any type of sublease or handling directly with Key Rock on the leasing of this 11.2%.
they were not.
And how were these unleased owners informed of this proceeding?
Certified mail, return receipt requested.
And there were some owners for whom the certified mail was not claimed. Is that correct?
Yes,
And would that be Yates Chapel Church, Alma McKinney, Melissa Ann Adkins, and Nicholas Allen Adkins?
that's correct.
And how did Key Rock try to notify these owners who didn't pick up the mail?
We ran ad in the Dickinson Star.
And are there any unknown owners in this petition that you're aware of?
No.
And you're seeking to pool 100% today, is that correct?
Yes,
And you're requesting that the board pool all of the owners as listed on Exhibit B?
yes,
And are you also requesting the board establish a procedure? Parties listed on Exhibit B3 shall have several options listed, given to them for how they might participate.
yes.
And are those options contained in the proposed order that's been submitted to this board under paragraph 9?
Yep, yes.
And the lease terms, if there were to be a voluntary lease, would those be the same terms as which you've offered the lease to Intervest?
Yes.
And what's the proposed depth of this well?
550 feet,
And what are the estimated reserves?
1,030 MMCF.
And you're familiar with the projected well cost, is that correct?
Yes,
And what is the projected well cost in this matter?
approximately 227,000.
And are you asking the board to create a sealed gob unit to further pool that unit?
Yes,
And the pooling by Intervest would be voluntary, is that correct?
yes,
And then the remaining owners would have one of these options listed in the proposed order.
correct.
And are you asking the board to name Key Rock as the operator of this unit?
Yes,
And in your opinion, if the board grants the application today, would it prevent waste, promote conservation, and protect correlative rights?
yes.
That would be our questions for Mr. Pate.
Any questions for Mr. Pate?
I have a quick question. I hope it's quick. It's actually about carbon credits. We really haven't talked a lot about that for the board. Can you kind of give a sort of an overview? I don't know if it can be brief about how this system works and how it should work with what you're proposing.
In 2014, California adopted a program whereby operators or companies could flare gas from mines. They put the program in two categories: active mines and abandoned mines. Under abandoned mines, their protocol applies basically a production decline curve, which caps the amount of gas that a mine can generate or that you can earn in a credit sense.
Okay.
On an active mine, there is no cap. What California Air Resource Board, their protocol does is allow operators to mine operators, oil and gas operators, whoever, who has the rights. You can sit up on a vent, you could drill horizontally into the mine in advance of mine. Any way you could access the gas in a mine, if you can bring it up to the surface and flare it, monitor it, meter it under their protocol, keep records of it, it generates carbon credits.
Now,
And
flaring is burning off. Is that,
you can flare it. You could put it into the pipeline if it were pipeline quality for the credits.
we talked about that, I think.
Or you could use it to generate electricity. Any California ARB approved destruction device would qualify to generate credits.
But burning into the atmosphere,
That's allowed.
and that you get carbon credits for that.
Yes.
Okay. I thought that was the program and okay.
Yep.
Not gonna put on my environmentalist hat at the moment, but I'm just curious about how.
It's a very strict and rigorous program. The protocol for active and abandoned mines I want to say is 100 pages, and the majority of it is the equations that go behind how do you meter the gas, how do you report it, and basically what they do is you take the metric tons of CH4 that you burn, convert it through their equations to metric tons of CO2. A single metric ton of CO2 is a carbon credit. Once the project goes through verification process, the verifiers will approve it. It then goes to ACR, the American Carbon Registry, for review. They review it, and then it goes to California Air Resource Board for final review. And the California Air Resource Board will issue the credits, and we go in and we sell them on the open market. And in a general sense, credits right now are going for about $18 per credit. A single credit amounts to approximately 3 MCF of gas. So you earn a little bit more at the moment than you would selling into a pipeline.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. The lease terms that you mentioned in your testimony, I don't think are listed in the application. Can you put on the record the lease terms that you would offer that would be the same as Intervest lease terms?
We would offer the same shut-in royalty. Off the top of my head, I don't remember it.
If, Mr. Jansen, if you look on, the lease terms that would be contained under section 9.2 of the proposed order, which would be 12.5% royalties multiplied by the ratio of the acreage of the tract, multiplied by the revenue.
Was that a separate letter? Is that what you're referring?
No, sir, this is in the proposed order that we've submitted to the board.
Yeah, the order is different from the application.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You didn't revise your application.
No, sir.
You've provided us another document.
Yes, sir.
for review.
Yes, okay.
That's right. We did not revise our application.
Okay.
Yes, I wasn't sure technically if the order is part of our consideration in this hearing, because that comes back to the order would be approved by the board. We would approve the application, and then the order would be approved by the staff in the AG's office later on. I'm correct in that process.
Well, we've had everybody looking at it, so.
These orders, whenever I read them, I'm thinking, but we haven't done that yet. So these are always projected
It's just projected, yes, sir.
or proposed.
Anything else, Mr. Harris?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut across your
Mr.
question.
Jansen.
Yeah, the other question I had is concerning, I lost my train of thought there just a second. I think one of the questions the board had last month, and we've asked the Attorney General's office to look into, was the concept of actually pooling a party that's already been leased. And I think Mr. Lansing is going to weigh in on that and give the board some guidance on that today.
Yes, sir. I've had an opportunity to look over this and discuss it with colleagues, with Brad Boyd, who's also discussed this in turn with Phil. And I've discussed this with one of my colleagues in the real estate section. We're fine with this arrangement. We understand it is a little unusual. Normally, the arrangement is that you would pull together parties who can't come up with an agreement. In this case, of course, they've had this lease with Intervest, but Code Section 45.2-1620A lays out 3 circumstances under which force pooling can be allowed, and we're satisfied that this situation satisfies A1. A2 is kind of the normal scenario where you're force pooling people together who haven't come up with an arrangement. But A1 under Section 45.2 is simply 2 or more separately owned tracts are embraced in a drilling unit, which of course is the case here. So we have no concerns with this arrangement.
Thank you, Mr. Lansing. Any other questions?
Yeah, I just had one more. You talked about the carbon credits having to go through a rigorous process for approval.
Sir.
Can you give some idea of what percentage of these credits get approved by This California, whatever, what was the name of it?
California Air Resource Board?
Yeah.
Sure.
Generally, overall throughout the country, and then what's Key Rock's history with that? Have they had any applications rejected in the past? Similar type of arrangement.
HEROC has never had any credits invalidated on any project. We have been doing this since 2014. We have one very large project in Illinois that accounts for the better part of 100 to 130,000 credits a year and consists of 15 mines. We probably have another 25 to 30 active and abandoned mines across the country. And we submit projects for verification and credits, I would say at a rate of 15 a year.
That's pretty close.
And we have never had an invalidation or any issues. One of the things we have to be very aware of when we operate is that any violation that we receive as a company on a project could endanger that project. The verifiers look for that. The verifiers call regulators. They make sure everything is above board. So far, Key Rock has 100% success rate. There are other companies in the country that do this. Environmental Credit Commodities is one. Nextera is one. Ruby Canyon. There are a few. I don't think, to my knowledge, any abandoned or active mine project yet has been invalidated. I do know that one project was halted on an ownership basis. One person owned one half of the mine, one person owned another. It was an abandoned mine, and the Air Resource Board did not know how to effectively take both projects on that one mine. The Air Resource Board does allow multiple operators to operate on an active mine, so that's not an issue. So as far as I know, there's never been an invalidation for any company for this, for active or abandoned mines.
Yeah. Okay, appreciate that.
Anything else? You have another witness?
No, sir, that'd be all our evidence.
Let me back up and do what I should have done to start with this. This is a petition for Key Rock to establish Key Rock 1 Seal God production unit consisting of 482.1210 acres for drilling, development, production of coalbed methane gas in the Seal God area. This is VGOB 22-1220-42. And this was continued from the February docket item. Anyone have any other questions? The board operates on a motion.
I'll move that we approve the petition.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Ms. Gilmore, will you pull the board?
Mr.
Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, this is Bruce Prather. I got on the conversation a little late, but I've listened to it. Can I vote on it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, just add my name to the list.
Ms. Gilmore is pulling the board right now, Mr. Pray.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Ratliff,
Abstain.
Mr. Jansen,
Yes.
Ms. Surratt,
Yes.
Mr. Prather.
Yes.
Thank you. That petition's approved. Next is item docket number 10, a petition from Key Rock Energy for well location exception for Key Rock number 1 located in the Nora Quadrant in the candidate magisterial district of Dixon County. Applicant requests Virginia Ethanol Board to enter an order to enable well number Key Rock number 1 to be drilled as depicted on the plat attached as Exhibit A, and that the applicant be granted the right to produce methane gas from the mined out jawbone seam in contour deep mine 41, which appears on the well work permit submitted by the inspector for unit K1. This is docket item VGOB 22-2012 or 1220, excuse me, 4255. You may proceed, Mr. Mullins.
Thank you, Mr. Ratliff. We would call Mr. Pate. Mr. Pate, you please state your name, by whom you're employed, and your job description, please.
Morgan Pate, employed by Key Rock Energy, geologist.
And you recently just gave testimony in regards to application number 4254, is that correct?
Yes.
And all of the answers that you gave in response to application 4254, would your answers be the same for 4255?
Yes.
All right. And so,
That testimony be incorporated.
thank you. And so Key Rock is asking for an exemption from the 1,000 feet requirement for distance of a well, is that correct?
Yes.
And the wells that you are asked that you're petitioning to have an exemption from, that would be Intervest well number VC 3753, is that correct?
Yes.
Intervest Operating LLC well number P 332, is that correct?
Yes.
And Intervest Operating LLC well number VC-3619, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, the distances from the for the 1,000 feet, one of them is 816, the first well is 816 feet, is that correct?
Yes.
The P 332 is at 985 feet from the proposed well.
Yes.
And VC 3619, that's 974 feet, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, the distance required is 1,000 feet. You may recall last month there was discussion with the board about why you would need an exemption for this location. Has Key Rock taken into account the topography, drainage ditches, distances to the public road, and the removal of underground coal pillars?
Oh, yes.
And has there been mapping submitted to staff showing the location and also these other features that would necessitate Key Rock to request this exemption?
Yes.
And so you are asking, based on that, you're asking that the proposed location of this well be approved?
Yes, sir.
And that would be our questions, Mr. Chair.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, just one.
Mr. Chance?
Can you sort of elaborate on what the technical basis is? You develop one of these sealed gob units, of the placement of the well itself. What are the driving factors involved with that? Underground, is there a certain specific part of a mine that you're trying to intersect? Can you give some details on that? What those considerations are?
Sure. In general terms, we prefer to be up dip as possible, as high up dip in any sealed area. We also prefer to be in an intersection of coal pillars and not between a pillar and the edge of the mine wall, for example. And we also very much prefer to be in an area where the pillars have not been removed by mining. We tend to drill into roof collapses and swells, and that's the end of that. In Virginia, compared to Illinois, the state is very mountainous and rugged. And the topography had a very large influence on where this well was located. We tried multiple spots inside this gob area over the probably a month and a half, 2 months, and we just couldn't make them work. Some were too close to railroads, some were too close to houses. The location that we are submitting today is along an existing Intervest access road that's already built, and in our opinion is in one of the better spots in this gob area.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Anything further, Mr. Mullins?
No, sir.
Board operates on a motion.
Somebody.
We have a motion, we have a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Ms. Gilmore, will you pull the board, please?
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Ratliff,
I abstain.
Mr. Jansen,
Yes.
Mrs. Surratt,
Yes.
Mr. Prather.
Yes.
That petition's approved, Mr. Mullins. Next is a petition from item number 11, petition from Key Rock Energy to update the board on the status of petition application for an existing lower banner carbon credit with Association of Deep Mine 26. Mr. Mullins, you may proceed.
And Mr. Chair, what Key Rock is currently in the having the title ran on that property. There are numerous tracks that have to be run. It's my understanding that that is in progress, and that Key Rock would request some additional time to complete that title work.
Would next month be too soon?
We are right now probably 15 to 20% complete. I believe we have 17 tracks in total to cover. That's very difficult to say. I would say next month would probably be too soon.
We'll put it on the May docket.
We can definitely have you a good update on the May docket.
Let's put that on the May docket to revisit. Anything further, Mr. Mullins?
No, sir. I'd just like to thank the board. It's been an interesting month, dealing, with the proposed orders, and we appreciate, the board's indulgence, especially the help staff.
Thank you. We have one question. Chance.
The current operation associated with that Lower Banner mine over there, is it still in active production right now?
I believe so. It's that mine cycles. It'll go through 4 or 5 months of production, and then the gas methane concentration and the flow will drop, and we'll turn it off for a few months, and then it will come back. It's very cyclical, but it tends to run, say, between March and August is for whatever reason, the mine's preferred time to outgas.
Does the staff have an opinion as to whether this operation should be allowed to continue actively until they have received a permit and a board order through this body here? Or should they be shutting that in until such time?
It's been in existence, so, at this point, if we get it permitted, that should satisfy, our requirements. It's done prior to all of this, so we're bringing it in the same manner as the other, so that it's, under the board and our jurisdiction. So we don't have a problem with it, operating till we get this done.
Okay.
We had that discussion with folks at, T-Rock.
Any other questions? Ms. Gilmer, you pulled the board.
Mr. Chairman, this is Bruce Prather.
Okay.
What effect, about 6-8 years ago, we had a pretty major earthquake in around the Washington, D.C. area. And I was living in Abingdon at that time, and I felt that earthquake. Would an earthquake have an effect on an abandoned mine? Would it increase the gas, or would it decrease the gas? Or would it have to be looked at again in the event something like this occurred again?
I don't know. I can say that I personally think that a lot of the gas we receive out of this mine is coming off a fault line. And I think that contributes to the cyclical nature. I don't know how an earthquake would affect the production.
Yeah.
I could say I'd hope it increased it.
This earthquake that I'm talking about, it affected the whole coal area in Western Virginia. And what I'm wondering about is, what effect is an earthquake? I realize that if you've got a 7 or an 8 earthquake, you've got something pretty large on your hands. But and maybe a minor earthquake wouldn't affect this. But what would happen if you did have a major earthquake? The one we had 6-8 years ago, at least had tremors in our area, in the coal area. And I'm just wondering, what effect does an earthquake have on your production? Does it increase it or decrease it?
I don't know if we've ever seen an increase or a decrease due to an earthquake, but if there were pillared areas in the mine that had not collapsed yet, I would assume that an earthquake could cause a collapse. And then I would follow that and say that that would probably hurt our production. Although I'm not sure if
it would depend on if it dammed up, and was a barrier.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, could I say something?
Absolutely.
Having worked with our geologists
Yeah.
and department in Richmond or Charlottesville, one of the things about an earthquake, it's a surface phenomenon. You don't actually have the movement underground. It doesn't generally affect the mine. It affects the surface movement.
Thank you.
So that's the interpretation I've gotten from our geology people. That question's been asked before.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Gilmer. repool the board, please.
Oh,
Mr.
what,
Harris,
what are we?
We're moving it to the May docket.
Oh, okay, yes, I approve that move.
Mr. Ratliff,
Abstain.
Mr. Jansen,
Yes.
Mrs. Surratt,
yes,
and Mr. Prather.
Yes.
Thank you. That's been moved to the May docket. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for accommodating my schedule.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sports, we have item number 3, a petition from Pocahontas Gas LLC, repooling under the Oakwood Coalbed Methane gas fields number 1 and 2 to address mapping updates and update track acreage. This is unit Y33, docket number VGOB 95-1024-0524-02. All parties interested, please come forward.
Mark Swartz and Kelly Berry.
You may proceed, but we need to swear in Miss Berry first.
Ms. Berry, do you swear and affirm their testimony is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed, Ms.
Okay, thank you. Kelly, could you state your name for us, please?
My name is Kelly Berry.
And who you work for?
I work for Pocahontas Gas LLC.
Who is the applicant on this petition?
It is Pocahontas Gas LLC.
And is this an existing coal bed methane producing unit?
Yes, it is.
And it was pooled previously under Oakwood 1, is that correct?
That is correct.
And the reason we're back here today, I think actually there are 2 reasons. One is there've been some mapping changes that we need to account for.
Yes,
And in addition, you're asking that the board repool the unit under Oakwood 2 to facilitate degas in advance of longwall mining.
yes.
What did you do to tell people that we were going to have a hearing today?
We mailed a copy of the petition to each owner by certified mail with a return receipt requested. And we also published a notice in the Virginia Mountaineer.
Okay. When did you publish?
We published March 9th, 2023.
Okay. And when did you mail?
We mailed February 23rd, 2023.
And have you provided the division with proof or your certificate with regard to mailing and your proof of publication?
Yes, we have.
And with the updated mapping and title information, could you tell us as of the present time, what percentage of the coal bed methane do you have either own or have under lease?
67.0125%.
And you're seeking to pool what percentage?
32.9875%.
Do you want to add any respondents to your application today?
No,
Do you want to dismiss any people today?
no.
I think I asked this, but I just want to confirm that the current operator of this unit is what company?
The current operator is Pocahontas Gas LLC.
Okay, who is also the applicant today?
Yes,
And is Pocahontas Gas still authorized to do business in the Commonwealth?
yes,
Still registered with the Department of Mines, Minerals and Energy and the division?
yes,
And does it still have a blanket bond on file for its operations?
yes.
Okay. Did the changes with regard to mapping cause the percentage of interest of the several lessors to change?
That's correct.
Did all of their interests change to some extent?
Yes,
So if the board were to approve this application, they would need to give all of the respondents another election opportunity.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Let's go to PDF page, I think it's 13. Get that up here. PDF page 13, actually, I'm sorry, let's go to PDF page 14. And that's a map, correct?
Yes.
And what does it show?
This reflects the location of this unit within the Oakwood field.
Okay, and in addition to showing the boundaries of this 80-acre Oakwood unit, does it also show some projected activities underground?
Yes.
Okay, and what are those?
This shows the projected locations of the 1 south and 2 south panels to be mined.
Okay, and within and obviously based on this map, the unit in question intersects those or is located within the mining area of the panel between or of those two panels, correct?
Yes.
And then let's go back to I think it's PDF page. Yeah, PDF page 5. And that
Okay.
is a different map. And this is what we call Exhibit A, and it shows the unit and it shows tracks within the unit, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then this page, PDF page 5, is followed by something that we call the tract identifications.
That's correct.
And the tract identifications corresponds to the numbers that we see on the map, PDF page 5. Did you get a call from any of the or get calls from any of the respondents before today's hearing with questions about this application?
Yes, we received a call from Wayne Davis.
Okay,
Um,
and let's go to the tract ID page, which is pages 6 and 7. It looks like Mr. Davis is a surface owner of tract 4A, correct?
yes.
Okay, and then if we go to the next page, it looks like Mr. Davis has, actually it'd be page 8 of the PDF. It looks like Mr. Davis has a royalty interest in tract 2. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And there are 2 entries for him. Does that mean that he acquired his interest at 2 different times?
Yes, the interest that is reflected as G underneath the ownership of tract 2 would be an interest that he inherited. And the interest that is reflected as H.2 underneath the ownership for tract 2 is an interest that was deeded to he and his wife.
Okay, and it looks like they got the interest by deed on 4/20 of 2010.
That is correct.
And when did they inherit the other interest, roughly?
That was in 2008.
Okay, and this unit was originally pooled in 1995, correct?
That is correct.
So their predecessors, Mr. Davis' predecessors in interest that he purchased from or inherited from already had a royalty interest that had been pooled in this 80-acre unit, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, to your knowledge, did they receive royalties, his predecessors in interest?
Yes.
Okay, and how about Mr. Davis? Has he been receiving royalty?
Yes, he has.
Okay. Let's go back to the Exhibit A, page 5. So if we look at page 5, map, the track 4A is down toward the, so it would be well, it's definitely the eastern portion of the unit over to the south. And it shows several well locations, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's the surface tract that Mr. Davis owns. And interesting.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay. Are any of those 3 wells drilled?
Y33C is a drilled frac well.
Okay, and the 2 other wells are Y33 J and K, correct?
Yes, those are
Okay.
proposed wells.
Okay. Based on conversations that you and other people from your company have had with Mr. Davis, well, but let me back up. Are those wells permitted?
No, they are not.
Okay. Have permit applications for 33 J and K even been filed?
No, they have not.
Okay. Based on conversations that you and other people in your company have had with Mr. Davis, you made a decision as to whether or not to proceed with the current proposed locations as shown on page number 5.
No, those locations are planned to be moved to another tract.
Okay. Would it be safe to say that you're planning on moving those to the east?
Yes.
The roads, the lines, the pink lines on this map, if the board is able to see them in color, are those roads?
Yes, those are existing roads.
Okay. And some of those existing roads, portions of those existing roads are already on the surface track, correct?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Now, if we look above the surface track to track 2, the tract in which Mr. Davis and others obviously have a royalty interest, there are no current wells, at least Pocahontas wells on that track, correct?
There are not.
And there are none proposed.
That's correct.
Notes here. Now with this application, let's go to PDF page 10. Okay.
Yes.
That's a well cost estimate, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Have you submitted a revised estimate to Sarah and the division today? I think probably.
Yes. We
Okay.
are planning to submit a revised estimate. Yes.
Oh, it hasn't gone out yet. Okay. And the revisions to the estimate, did you catch an issue with regard to the estimated total depth?
Yes, that was revised to reflect a more accurate average depth of gob wells being drilled in this area.
Okay. And what is the average of the existing wells that you have in the area?
1,838 feet.
Okay, so the revised Exhibit C that you're going to be submitting to the board or to the division is going to have as an estimated total depth 1,838 feet instead of 1,482 feet.
That's correct.
And then I think we also caught an error in the Exhibit C that was filed, and that would be that we by mistake included a sales line at $30,000.
Yes,
And that would be a gathering charge and shouldn't have been in this estimate, correct?
that's correct.
And so what we're submitting to the board to correct this corrects the estimated total depth and then adjusts the drilling contract and other entries to account for roughly another 400 feet, but also deletes the sales line labor, correct?
That's correct.
And even having made those adjustments, let me ask you, what is the total of the revised estimate?
The total of the revised estimate is $510,534.
So basically, by increasing the depth, in spite of the fact that the sales line has been removed, the well cost only changes by $400 roughly.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay, now, once you change your well cost estimate, Exhibit C, you also needed to adjust and revise the next page, which is 11, which is your estimate of allowable cost by panel.
That is correct.
Okay, and have you prepared and do you intend to submit a revised Exhibit M?
Yes,
Okay, and your revised Exhibit M, just to skip to the bottom line, the combination of costs for Y33 from 1 and 2 south now would total what number?
the combined allocated costs for both 1 south and 2 south attributable to unit Y33 would be $2,829,395.30.
That's an increase, I think, of something on the order of, roughly $2,000.
Yes,
In terms of the proposed lease terms for people who might be deemed to have been leased, and obviously we're going to probably have some of those. Although not for sure, but what would those terms be?
those terms would be paid at $5 per acre per year with a 5-year prepaid term and 12.5% or 1/8 royalty.
So it looks like escrow is not required for this unit, is that correct?
That's correct.
So you'll be able to pay, if the application is approved, you'll be able to pay with regard to, consistent with the new mapping for frac production, which will continue for some period of time. And then once the sealed gob or the active gob production from these units, you've provided a division of interest for 1 south and 2 south, and the royalty payments will be made consistent with those percentages on Exhibit B3, right?
That's correct.
And people who are being pooled can use the percentages that are stated in Exhibit B3 opposite their names and addresses to multiply those percentages times the estimated allowable cost, and they'll come up with the required deposit against participation if they choose to participate.
That's correct.
Is it your opinion that allowing or repooling this unit to provide for under Oakwood 2 is a further way to protect miners and mining operations by degassing in advance of mining?
Yes,
And is it your opinion that if you combine the ownership interests and the leasehold interests that Pocahontas has acquired with the rights of the people who are being pooled under this, if this application is granted, if you combine those, the correlative rights of all owners of the coal bed methane here will be protected?
yes.
I think that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Mr. Schwartz?
Just one question of clarification on the wells that are involved in this repooling application. On page, let's see, get the right page here. Yeah. This only applies to wells Y33, E, J, G, H, I, J, and K. So the three frac wells that are already drilled that are represented on page 5, Y33, A, B, and C, those aren't impacted by this order at all, correct? It's just the other wells?
Correct,
proposed well.
except to the extent that we've done some remapping. So we're gonna have to go back to the beginning of time and adjust the percentages and bring them forward in terms of royalty. Follow me?
Yeah, I understand that. So.
Okay, but other than that, those pre-existing frac wells are not affected by this order.
Okay.
Is that what you were, or am I not?
Yeah, I think so. I just want to make sure why they weren't listed on the order itself. If they will be in fact paying, if their percentages are going to change also. Those three wells.
The percentages, while they are frac wells, because the mapping has changed, their frac percentages will change, okay? Once there is production from the panels, the percentage will shift out of the frac well production column into the division of interest in the two panels. Okay, so yes, their percentages will change, but their interest in the frac wells will remain the same. I mean, they'll still have a royalty interest, but it is a bit of a moving target because of the mapping. Otherwise, I would just say no. Okay.
Okay.
I will
All right.
also add that well Y33A is plugged, and Y33B and C will also be plugged when mining requires us to plug those.
Okay.
There are two active mines that we're paying royalties on it, or not mines, two active wells that we're paying royalties on at the moment.
Correct. Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Any other questions? I have a couple. On Exhibit C, Mr. Schwartz, Ms. Gilmer has noted that the well name and the field is listed as template. I assume when you resubmit that AFE, you'll correct those.
Yes, we can remove the word template. Yes.
Thank you. And this would trigger an offer for participation all over again, right?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And could you just briefly discuss the mapping change? What units are we looking at?
Tracks, you mean?
Which tracks?
The
On the map.
mapping changes affected the acreages of all tracks within the unit.
Okay. And my last question is, when Mr. Davis acquired this, the previous landowner got the royalty payments and there was no, he didn't buy the previous royalty payments. So going forward, from the date of the document being executed, he would receive royalties from that day forward and not retroactively, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Anyone have any other questions? Board operates on a motion.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Gilmore, will you pull the board, please?
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Ratliff,
Yes.
Mr. Jansen,
Yes.
Mrs. Surratt,
yes,
and Mr. Prather.
Yes,
That petition is approved as presented, Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you.
Next, we have a petition for Pocahontas Gas for repooling under Oakwood Cobed Methane Gas Field Number 2, Unit BB 33, docket numbers VGOB 04-0817-1318-02. Mr. Schwartz, you may proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I could adopt or include Kelly's testimony from the prior hearing with regard to her employment and the operator and compliance with the Virginia code and regulations in terms of its operations in Virginia, and skip through that on this, I'd appreciate it.
That'll be incorporated.
Thank you. Kelly, could you state your name for us again, though?
Kelly Berry.
And you're here in this instance as a representative speaking to a petition to repool unit BB 33. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and if my memory serves correctly, we're here for one reason with regard to BB 33, and that is to allow production under Oakwood 2. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So we don't have a remapping issue, we don't have percentage changes, and we don't have to deal with all of that.
No,
After you mailed and published with regard to, and we'll come back to that, but with regard to this application, did you receive any calls from the respondent?
no,
And we only have one respondent here, is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay. So to start, what did you do to notify Mr. Stillwell and others potentially that we were going to have a hearing today?
We mailed a copy of the petition via certified mail with returned receipt requested, and we published notice in the Virginia Mountaineer.
And when did you mail?
February 23rd, 2023.
And when did you publish?
March 9th, 2023.
And have you provided the division with your certificates or certificate with regard to mailing and proof of publication?
Yes, we have.
And what is the percentage of interest that the applicant either owns or has acquired in this unit?
98.7625%.
And you're seeking to pool what interest?
1.2375%.
And let's look, well, let me ask you a couple of other questions before we look at mapping. Do you want to add any respondents today?
No,
And I assume you haven't been able to reach an agreement with Mr. Stillwell, so you don't want to dismiss him.
correct.
Now let's go to the mapping and a PDF page number 6, tract identifications that shows that Mr. Stillwell owns fee with regard to tract number 5 on the map. Is that right?
That is correct.
And it shows his acreage and the percentage that you gave us just a moment ago.
Yes.
Okay, now if we go back to page 5 and we look at the mapping, tract 5 is looks like a square off to the southeast corner of the unit. Is that right?
That's correct.
And part of that square is in this unit, BB 33, and part of it is in the unit to the east.
Yes.
Okay, and then if we look at the projected development under Oakwood 2, if we go to page, this was 14, we have the same map basically, or a similar map that we just saw with regard to the previous docket item, showing 1 south development and 2 south development and the location of wells within the projected panel, right?
Yes.
Okay, what are the existing producing wells in BB 33?
That is BB 33 and BB 33A.
Okay, and what are the additional wells that are proposed at this time?
The additional wells to be proposed are, let me get back up here. BB 33C, D, G, and H.
And have you, and you obviously, when you filed this, you provided a cost estimate, correct?
Yes.
And it was the same estimate based on averages at that time or estimates at that time that we've just discussed with regard to Y33.
Yes.
And is it your intention to submit a revised Exhibit C as you testified in reference to Y33.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to incorporate that testimony if I could.
It will be done. We'll incorporate that.
Okay, and just to summarize the changes, the depth is going to change to the average of the 4 or 5 wells that you have at the moment, correct?
Correct.
yes,
And then the template is going to go away and you're gonna put in the well names, or at least, I guess you would put in the well names, and then the Oakwood 2 field would go in, correct?
yes,
And the date's gonna change at the top and at the bottom, and the total is gonna change slightly.
that's correct.
Okay. Did you incorporate the revised well cost estimate into Exhibit M, a revised Exhibit M for this unit BB 33?
Yes,
When you did that, let me find my. And when you did that, did the total participation number for BB 33, combining panels 1 south and 2 south, did it change slightly?
yes, it did change slightly.
Okay, and what will the new number be in your revised exhibit BB 33?
The total allocated cost for unit BB 33 attributable to 1 south and 2 south panels is $2,849,501.98. So a roughly $2,000 increase.
And that number then, go back to, for example, just to illustrate, if we go back to a page in 3, if we go into exhibit page number PDF page 10, if Mr. Stillwell wants to know what his participation cost would be, his participation cost in 1 south is the percentage stated below or opposite his name for 1 south in that column, and his percentage is for 2 south is the percentage stated in that column opposite his name, and he would multiply that times the total allocated costs for B33 to come up with a dollar figure if he wanted to participate.
That's correct.
Okay. Is it your opinion that the wells contemplated in BB 33 in the as shown on the map at page PDF page 14 are a reasonable way to try to degas the coal in advance of mining?
Yes,
And if we combine the interests that the applicant has acquired either by ownership or by agreement and lease with a pooling order, pooling Mr. Stillwell's interest in the Oakwood 2 gas, frankly, will the rights of all owners, the correlative rights of all owners be protected?
yes.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions from the board? Ms. Berry, you have the same problem on Exhibit B as the other one on the well name and the field. You've got
Yes.
template. Okay, as long
Yes,
as you.
those will be updated and provided.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anything further, Mr. Schwartz?
No.
Board operates on a motion.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Gilmore, will you poll the board, please?
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Ratliff,
Yes.
Mr. Jansen,
Yes.
Mrs. Surratt,
yes,
and Mr. Prather.
Yeah,
Thank you. Mr. Schwartz, that's approved as presented.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the docket is petition for Intervest Operations LLC for repooling unit number 538420, docket number VGOB 22-0621-4242-01. All parties interested, please come forward.
Tim Scott, Larry Reeves, and James Ayers for Intervest Operating LLC.
We need to swear in your witness, Mr. Scott.
What was the other one besides
Hands
Larry?
up.
James Ayers.
James
Ayers.
Ayers.
It's Ayers, Ayers.
Sorry, Ms. Gilman.
I got it. Mr. Ayers, Mr. Reeves, do you swear and affirm that your testimony is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Got it.
Mr. Scott, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Reeves, please state your name, by whom you're employed, in your job description.
Larry Reeves. I'm employed by Intervest Operating as a landman.
And are you familiar with this application pending before the board?
Yes, sir.
And is this unit located in the core Nord Colbeck gas field?
Yes, it is.
How many acres does this unit contain?
58.8 acres.
And Intervest has a substantial part of this unit under lease and or under ownership, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Are there any respondents listed on Exhibit B3 that we're going to dismiss from the application today?
No.
And do we have unknown parties in this unit?
Yes.
And I believe the only respondent is an unknown party, is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct?
Yes.
And how were the parties respondent notified of this hearing?
Publication in the Bluefield newspaper.
I believe this was the Dickinson Star, is that right?
No, this is Buchanan County.
Okay, I'm sorry. Bluefield Daily Telegraph, sorry. Is that correct, Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Okay. Have we filed proof of publication with the board?
Yes, we have.
And is there an escrow requirement for this unit?
No.
Is Intervest authorized to transact business in the Commonwealth?
Yes.
And is there a bond on file with the board?
Yes, there is.
What lease terms would you offer to any unleased parties or the person listed on Exhibit B3?
$5 an acre per year for a 5-year paid-up lease.
Okay. And do you think this is reasonable compensation for a lease in this area?
Yes.
And what percentage of the unit does Intervest have under lease?
97.47142857%.
And again, this does include acreage in which Intervest is a fee simple owner of the minerals, is that right?
Yes, it does.
And what percentage of the unit are you seeking to pool today?
2.5285714.3%.
And you're asking the board to pool the unleased party listed on Exhibit B3, is that correct?
Yes.
And then Intervest be named the operator for this unit, is that also correct?
Yes, sir.
And if we were able to reach an agreement with the individuals listed on Exhibit B3 or the heirs, what would be the address used for any party making an election under an order entered by the board?
Intervest Operating LLC, 408 West Main Street, Abingdon, Virginia, 24210. Attention, Kevin Miller, Vice President Land.
And should this be the address for all communications with regard to this, any pooling order?
Yes, it should.
That's all I have for Mr. Reeves.
Any questions for Mr. Reeves?
Yeah, just one clarification. Can you clarify why this is deemed a repooling as opposed to a pooling application?
We had previously pooled this well. Do you remember the date?
It was in June of 2022.
Since that time, we have discovered that there was a tract missed at that point, so therefore we're repooling.
And that percentages of the lease versus unleased change as well. Is
Yes.
that right? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So which is the new tract, which is identified on your plat?
Yes, new tract from what was initially submitted.
Can you identify which tract that is?
Tract 5 on the plat.
Okay, thank you.
You may proceed, Mr. Scott.
Thank you. Mr. Ayers, please state your name by whom you're employed in your job description.
Yes, James Ayers, Intervest Operating and landman.
And you're familiar with this application beginning before the board?
Yes.
And what's the proposed depth of this well?
3,200 feet.
Are you also familiar with the proposed or estimated reserves of this unit?
Yes.
And what would that be?
900 MMCF?
And are you also familiar with the, well cost for the proposed unit?
Yes.
What's the estimated dry hole cost?
$231,842.
And the completed well cost?
$699,541.
And you participated in preparation of AFV, is that correct?
Correct.
And in your opinion, if this application is granted, would it be promote conservation, prevent waste, and protect relative rights?
Yes.
That's all I have for Mr. Ayers.
Any question for Mr. Ayers? Anything further, Mr. Scott?
That's it for this application.
Pardon?
You submitted for approval.
Well, I'm sorry, that's all I have.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm
Thank you.
mumbling. I apologize.
Join the crowd. The board operates on any questions? Board operates on a motion.
Motion for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Gilmore, will you pull the board, please?
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Ratliff,
I abstain.
Mr. Jansen,
Yes.
Mrs. Surratt,
yes,
and Mr. Prather.
Yes.
Mr. Scott, your petition's approved as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next is item number 6, a petition from Intervest Operating LLC for pooling unit VC 600001, docket numbers VGOB 23-03, 21-4256. All parties interested, please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to ask this be continued to April. We had several respondents who did not receive notice, and we can get that accomplished before the April hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. That'll be posted on the April docket. Moving to item 7, a petition from Intervest Operating LLC for pooling VCI 600010, docket numbers VGOB 23-03, 21-4257. All parties interested, please come forward.
Again, Tim Scott, Larry Reeves, and James Ayers for Intervest Operating LLC.
You may proceed, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Reeves, again, your name behind you and pulling your job description, please.
Larry Reeves, employed by Intervest Operating LLC as a landman.
Did you participate in the preparation of this application?
Yes, sir.
And where is this unit located? What field?
Northfield,
And how many acres does this unit contain?
58.77 acres.
And again, Intervest does have a substantial portion of this unit under lease, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Are we going to dismiss any parties respondent listed on Exhibit B3?
No.
And how was notice provided to parties listed on Exhibit B3 of this hearing today?
Same publication through the Bluefield Daily.
And because we do have unknown owners, is that correct?
Yes.
And have you provided proof of publication to the board?
Yes, we have.
And is there an escrow requirement for this unit?
No.
And again, is Intervest authorized to transact business in the Commonwealth?
Yes, they are.
And there is a blanket bond on file with the department, is that correct?
Yes.
And if you were able to reach an agreement with the parties listed on Exhibit B3, what terms would you offer?
$5 per year per acre for a 5-year paid-up lease.
And you consider this to be reasonable compensation for a lease in this area?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What percentage of the units Intervest have under lease?
99.28285714%.
And this again includes acreage in which Intervest has a fee simple interest in the minerals, is that right?
Yes, it does.
Okay. What percentage of the unit are you seeking to pool today?
0.71714286%.
And are you requesting the board to pool the unleased parties listed on Exhibit B3?
Yes.
And that Intervest be named the operator of this unit, is that correct?
Yes.
And with any order that would be entered by the board if our application is approved today, what would the address used for making any elections under that order?
Intervest Operating LLC, 408 West Main Street, Abingdon, Virginia, 24210. Attention, Kevin Miller, Vice President, Land.
And this is the address for all communications regarding any order that's entered by the board, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That's all I have for Mr. Reeves.
Question for Mr. Reeves.
Mr. Reeves, did you say that there would not be an escrow requirement for this? We have unknowns and unlocables. So will there be an escrow or not?
There will not.
Why do you not need a escrow if who are you gonna pay?
All of the unknowns are now being, is it Department of Treasury? I'm not sure that address.
Yes.
Okay, so you're gonna pay them, you're gonna do it that way.
It goes
Okay,
to Unclaimed Department Division in Richmond.
okay.
The escrow we use for, Mr. Jansen is for the, conflicting claimants.
For their unleased, correct.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Mr. Scott, you may proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Ayers, state your name again, by whom you're employing your job description.
James Ayers, Intervest Operating LLC and Landman.
And you participate in this application, is that right?
Yes.
And you're familiar with the proposed depth of this well?
Yes.
And also the estimated reserves for this unit?
990 MMCF.
Are you also familiar with the proposed well cost?
Yes.
And you participate in the preparation of the FAE that was, or AFE that was submitted with our application, is that right?
Correct.
And what's the estimated dry hole cost for this unit?
$254,902.
And the estimated completed well cost?
$738,007.
And in your opinion, if the board grants our application today, would it promote conservation, prevent waste, and protect relative rights?
Yes.
That's all I have for Mr. Ayers.
Any questions from the board? Anything further, Mr. Scott?
That's all I have on this one, Mr. Chairman.
Board operates on a motion.
I'll move for approval of the request.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Gilmer, you pull the board, please.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Ratliff,
Abstain.
Mr. Jansen,
Yes.
Mrs. Surratt,
Yes.
and Mr. Prather.
Yes.
That one is approved as presented, Mr. Scott. Next is a petition from Intervest Operating LLC for pooling unit VCI 530642, docket numbers BGOB 23-0321-4258. All parties interested, please come forward.
Again, Tim Scott, Larry Reeves, and James Ayers from Intervest Operating LLC.
You may proceed, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Reeves, one more time, your name, by whom you're employed in your job description, please.
Larry Reeves, employed by Intervest Operating LLC as a landman.
And you're familiar with this application?
Yes, sir.
And you helped prepare the application, is that right?
Yes, I did.
And where is this unit located?
Nora Colbed Gasfield,
And how many acres does this unit contain?
58.77 acres.
And again, Intervest has a substantial part of this unit under lease, is that right?
Yes.
And that's based on leases and also ownership of the minerals, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any parties responding we're going to dismiss from this application today?
No.
And how was notice of this hearing provided to the respondents listed on Exhibit B3?
Publication in the newspaper, Dickinson Star.
And we also mailed, is that correct?
Yes,
And we provided the proof of mailing and proof of publication to the board?
we did.
Okay. Is there an escrow requirement for this unit?
No.
And is Intervest authorized to transact business in the Commonwealth?
Yes.
And again, is there a blanket bond on file with the department?
Yes.
And again, what lease terms would you offer any party who would determine the lease with you all?
$5 per acre per year for a 5-year paid-up lease.
And again, is this reasonable compensation for a lease in this area?
Yes.
And what percentage of the unit is under lease presently to Intervest?
86.47%.
And again, that does include acreage that is owned in fee simple by you all, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what's the percentage of the unit you're seeking to pool today?
13.53%.
And you're asking the board to pool those parties that are listed on Exhibit B3?
Yes.
And that Intervest be named the operator for this unit, is that also correct?
Yes.
And if any elections are made under the order, if our application is granted today, what would be the address used for making such elections?
Intervest Operating LLC, 408 West Main Street, Abingdon, Virginia, 24210. Attention, Kevin Miller.
And again, that's the address for all communications for any order entered by the board, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all I have for Mr. Reeves.
Any question for Mr. Reeves? Hearing none, you may proceed, Mr. Scott.
Thank you. Mr. Ayers, one last time, your name, by whom you're employed, your job description.
James Ayers, Intervest Operating LLC and Land Man.
And you're familiar with this application, is that correct?
Yes.
You also participate in the preparation of the application, is that also correct?
Correct.
Are you familiar with the proposed depth of this well?
Yes, 2,600 feet.
And also the proposed, of the estimated reserves of this unit?
721 MMCF.
And you, again, you participate in the preparation of the AFE, is that right?
Yes.
So you're familiar with the well cost?
Yes.
What's the estimated dry hole cost?
$254,422.
And the estimated completed well cost?
$690,107.
And again, if the board grants our application today, would it prevent waste, promote conservation, and protect relative rights?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have for Mr. Ayers.
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr.
I do have a question about the unknown unlocatable, that we're not escrowing. I must have missed something somewhere along the way, but what happens to this money now? It goes to the state and stays there until these folks are found instead of an escrow. Okay, have I been sleeping for the last 2 or 3 years? I don't remember us doing that previous to this. Have we done that before? Okay,
It was, when I don't know exactly the date.
okay,
The General Assembly passed a bill that the unknown unlocatables would go directly.
go there, okay.
Yeah, go to the Department of Treasury. And we are continuously working on sending money to the Department of Treasury. There's still some out there that need to be resolved, but it's a continuous process.
Okay, okay. I mean, it kind of makes sense, but I just, I missed something along the way, but thank you. Yes,
Mr. Harris, the other part of that equation is, just because we've listed them as, a party respondent on B3, there still is an ongoing effort to locate these parties. And if they are located, that information will be transmitted both to the board and to the Department of Treasury for disbursement of those funds to which they're entitled.
okay, sounds good. Thank you then.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Any other questions? Hearing none, the board operates on a motion.
I'll move for approval of the petition.
Have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Gilmore, you pull the board, please.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Ratliff,
Abstain.
Mr. Jensen,
Yes.
Mrs. Surratt,
Yes.
Mr. Prather.
Yes.
Mr. Scott, your petition's approved as presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the docket, the board will receive an update from the board and division on activities from the staff.
Chairman, I don't have anything, to update on. Everything's normal, business is normal. Fine.
Yeah, we do have a meeting next month that,
I'm expecting to receive 3 petitions from Intervest, and then we have one today that was continued, so we have 4 on the docket for April
Okay.
as of right now.
okay, thank you.
The last item, we'll review the minutes and approve them from the February meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion approved.
Second,
Any discussion? Ms. Gilmore, will you pull the board, please?
Mr. Harris,
yes.
Mr. Ratliff, Mr. Jensen,
Yes.
Mrs. Surratt,
Yes.
Mr. Prather.
Yes.
Thank you. Anything else for the good of the order? If not, we will adjourn. Thank you.